pilots, starting with our boss is, I guess he's not here. Well, Greg Winto's our boss. He runs the duty pilots as our senior manager. Sitting right in the back of the room is our longest serving, shortest standing duty pilot. He's actually not standing right now.
It's true, it's true.
When he started this job, he was 6'3", tan, and the duty pilot gig has ground him down. He drives a Mini Cooper because he thought he didn't have a choice. Our token first officer is Kimberly Anderson. She has flown up and down every oil and gas pipeline this country owns. Her first experience flying above 100 feet was American Airlines. And then there's me. I got volunteered for this due to my debilitating fear of public speaking. So what are we going to talk about? First, we're going to talk about the facility. Where are we? When was it built? What's in here? Then we're going to move on to what's more important, and that is the why did we put all the money and effort into building this? What does it do? Then I'm going to kind of walk you around virtually, talk about who works here and what they do to make the magic happen. First, we have to have our obligatory safety and admin slide. If we have a tornado, we stay here. The safest place in the Metroplex right here for a tornado. If we have a fire, we do not stay here. This half of the room goes out the door you came in. Greg Wintel, Seth McQueen will lead you out that door. This half of the room comes with me. Out this door, we're going to race. Both of these passageways go out to the ops floor where we have fire exits in all the corners. We're going to head towards the ones that don't have smoke coming out of them, and then we're going to meet in the parking lot. If we have a power failure, you're not even going to notice because we're going to go right to generator, but if it happens, we'll stay here. If there's a medical emergency, we have AEDs and first aid kits all over the ops floor. We get one in here quick and make a phone call to get some help here. And if you need a restroom break, technically you need an escort on the ops floor. So for the men's room, that's going to be Seth McQueen, since Greg's not here right now, if you need that restroom break, and Kim Anderson will help for the women's room if you need that. So where are we? We're going to talk about this facility, some fun facts, and then we're going to talk about what is going on out there and how is this place organized. Unfortunately, because of the size of the group, we will not physically go out on the ops floor. The passages are just too narrow. So I'm going to walk you through it on PowerPoint, and then we'll have some time for question and answer afterward in case there's still some confusion about how that's set up there. So this is our IOC. We built this in 2015, right after the merger with US Air. We have a whole Skyview campus now. A lot of stuff is new, but this building was the first one. We did that deliberately so we could start running the operation the way we wanted to. This took every aspect of our daily operations across the company and put it not just into one building, but into one room. And there's a reason for that. We wanted a lot of crosstalk of information amongst all of these departments. Scheduling, tracking, dispatch, maintenance. We have our own weather and ATC liaisons here. Hotels, crew coordination. We'll talk about crew coordination later. You'll love that part. Our load planning, security, which is a global effort. All of our customer service feeds up into this room. Of course, the duty pilots, as Jeff already talked about, and our sector managers. Some fun facts. The facility is 149,000 square feet. The fact that the architects didn't make it an even 150 makes the center of my brain itch, but we're at 149. We have 500 workstations. They're not all on this floor. There's a first floor also, but all of the workstations are equally connected. You can sit at any one of them and do whatever it is your job is, because you can dial into any service that you need. We can withstand a F3 hurricane or F3 tornado, 165-mile-an-hour wind. If it's an F4, I don't know what to tell you. F3 or less is what it's built for. If we lose power here, we go right to generator. It's fairly seamless, and we can run for 4 days. With the city being completely blacked out, we can run the airline here for 4 days. You probably noticed as you walked in that it's pretty quiet out there. In fact, just us in here talking is a lot louder than it is out there. There are 400 people out there right now working. They're on the phone, they're talking to each other, but you can talk back and forth in a conversational tone because of all the white noise generators that you put all over the ops floor. It's also the only building at the company where I can't constantly hear my tinnitus. The monitors, we got 40 of them out there. And the IOC director controls those. Those can have anything he wants or she wants on them. Sometimes it's the World Series, that's a good day. Other times it's how many diverse do we have going on right now, where did they go, and which of the airfields that are receiving them are about to be overwhelmed. So we have a lot of sharing of information with the monitors. We no longer have the big board in the war room like in Dr. Strangelove, and that is because all of these workstations, they all have 4 or 5 monitors. They can all connect to anything in the company that anybody sitting there needs to see. So there's no longer a need for all of us looking at one big screen on the side of the wall. If this isn't good enough, we have another one of these on the other side of town. It's not as nice as this one. It's a long drive, it's 20 miles away. We did that deliberately in case a major storm or some major event takes this building down. We can take everybody who's working here to go to another place, fire that thing up in a few hours, and have the airline running again until we can bring this building back online. The command center, that's where you are right now. We activate this for crisis, for awesome tour groups. We've already had some folks asking about the workstation. There are 40 of these, they're all connected. Depending on what sort of crisis we're working, each stakeholder will get a desk. They're all talking to each other, so you might have the CEO, labor and legal, crew scheduling, maintenance, whoever's needed to be here to work that particular crisis. And we run this room simultaneous with that room. For example, when we were helping out the country getting out of Afghanistan, our airline had a play in that. We ran that smaller operation from this room, while that room out there ran the rest of the airline. And now the picture. I do apologize for the picture, it is upside down. I'm good enough with PowerPoint I could rotate it, but then all the words were upside down, and that's where my skills ended. So, you're here, and everything that you're looking at outside the glass is out here. So just bear with me on that. Right outside the glass, the desk right in front of us, going all the way across the op center, is crew scheduling and crew tracking. We do separate them deliberately. They like it that way, but that whole first set of rows, crew scheduling and crew tracking. Working our way around counterclockwise, our load planners, who do all of your weight and balance, are in here, and then we have our maintenance corner. We split up our maintenance operation into wide body and narrow body. All of the wide body maintenance managers sit in one area. The narrow body gets split up between Airbus and Boeing, and they do fight a lot, but it's somewhat entertaining. The entire back wall is dispatch, and we split that up, whether that is going to be domestic dispatch or if it's international, we split that up regionally. Then we come around here to what we call the units. I'll talk about what that is here in a second, but any terrible reassignment that you ever got that ruined the rest of your trip and maybe your personal life for several days, that came from there. We have our own hotel and limo company that works all of our ground transportation and our limousines. We provide managerial oversight of that company. They are a third-party vendor though, and they all sit in the op center with us so we can talk to them directly. And then, what's in the middle? This is where the leadership of the IOC sits. All of these groups, these functional areas inside the IOC have representation on the bridge. And that representation is there so that one person, the IOC director, has clear visual contact to every question, or to the answer to every question he or she could have. So the folks who work on the bridge talk to the other folks on the floor, feed that information to the IOC director so that the director can make decisions on how we're going to run the airline that day. That director has direct comms to the senior leadership of the company. So all roads lead to Rome, and all information comes here to the center of the bridge. That one makes sense. What's a little bit less obvious and more useful is the open architecture. We don't have stovepiping of information here. It's human nature. If we took these groups and put them in different buildings, or if we put them in the same building but behind closed doors and down hallways, eventually everyone will play I've Got a Secret. And they won't go through the effort of moving some piece of information that they know to someone else who might need it. But when you look out across that floor and go, I know that this airplane has a maintenance problem, I bet scheduling needs to know that, they're just right over there. You can just walk right over there and tell them, and they do the same for you. So while all the information does come up here, it also goes all over the floor so that all of the various work groups know what's going on with the other work groups, makes us a lot more efficient. And the last thing is we have all these conference rooms, none of them are as big as this, but they do bring the entire IOC on both floors, so plenty of space for meetings. What do the lights mean? I have no idea. I stole this slide. I've been trying to figure out for a year and a half what the lights mean. I finally found this slide. So as of 3 days ago, I knew what they meant. We don't use the lights a whole lot anymore, but our older phone system, we're tied to the lights that you can see on the floor out there. Green's an incoming call. If you see a red light, the line that is at that desk has been transferred to somewhere else, and the line is active with a blue light. We're replacing that whole phone system with a web-based thing, so the lights will go away. But everyone always asks, what do the lights mean in all the tours? And now I finally know. After today, I'm going to immediately forget. Okay, that's great and all, but more importantly is the why. Clearly, this building costs a lot of money. We have 1,700 people who work here. They cost a lot of money too. So why did we put all the money and effort into putting this together? And why did we build this facility first when we put together the whole new campus? And this is why. Our mission here is to run this airline as closely as possible to the plan. The plan was made months ago. We didn't make the plan. A lot of times we don't like the plan, but the plan was made months ago. It can't account for spur of the moment things, IT failures, weather, fleet groundings, security issues, etc. We take what is actually happening around the airline and try to keep this train on the tracks or get it back on the tracks as quickly as possible if we have a disruption. So, no plan survives first contact with a single day at an airline. As already alluded to, weather, thunderstorms are the big one. We also have hurricanes and tornadoes and blizzards and all the other stuff, but thunderstorms is really what brings the airline almost to a grinding halt. So we face those here in the IOC and keep the airline running or put it back as quick as possible. We also have IT failures. A lot of our IT failures, I'll admit, are self-inflicted. We had one just this morning. We did that to ourselves. We pushed an update to one of our applications. The other applications didn't talk to that application, and now all the pilots are running around the system with their iPads, and they can't get the #1 app they need to do their job to actually work. So the IOC is doing workarounds to make that happen and keep the airline running until we can fix it. Not all of our IT problems are self-inflicted. Some of them come from outside the company. I'm not saying cyber attack, but we do have cyber disruption. For example, the CrowdStrike issue that we had this summer that took down American, United, and Delta simultaneously. We didn't do that, but we had to work through it. We also have fleet groundings. We have global supply chain issues. COVID hit us really hard with global supply. We're still working through that. And we have civil unrest and protests and war. All these things that the plan that was made a few months ago can't take into account. Here's a typical summer, and I mean last summer. 72 million passengers. We worked 700,000 flights in one summer. 6,500 flights a day was common, and we had a few that were over 7,000. For context, if you take everything Delta flies, including their wholly owned regional, and you put JetBlue on top of that, we still fly more. Our dispatchers will work up to 15 airborne flights simultaneously. Those are just the ones that are airborne. They're also working another 10 or so that have yet to push back, but they have to develop flight plans for. So one person at a dispatch desk is juggling 20 to 25 flights at a time in the summer. I'm joking about the APUs. We have more than 4 of them that work. But the point is, as the summer goes along, we don't have time to really fix airplanes. So as June rolls into July, rolls into August, the planes that our pilots are dealing with are more and more broken, which puts a lot more stress on our ability to keep this airline running on time. By the time we get to August, you show up in an airplane, expect to find 7, 8, 9, 10 things that are already in the logbook that you'll have to deal with just to operate that one leg. We get through summer, we get to fall, we start fixing airplanes. This past summer, we had 8 consecutive days of devastating thunderstorms right here at DFW. Even by Texas standards, we've never seen that before. And it hit us hard. We were able to work our way out of it, but it was all hands on deck. Everybody who works in the IOC on every shift was in here working simultaneously, trying to dig the airline out from under that. And we threw in a couple of hurricanes on top of that, just for fun. And I also already mentioned the CrowdStrike IT meltdown that shut down any company that runs on Windows. Southwest was fine because they're on Windows 3.1 from 1995. All right, who works here? What do they do? I'm not going to read all of these, but we're going to go through all of them. I'm going to do this chronologically. I'll start with who's working here and what are they doing before the pilots even show up to fly. Then we'll talk about what we're doing after the pilots arrive, and then wrap it up. So prior to any of us pilots showing up, here's who's already hard at work. Scheduling, dispatch, maintenance, weather and ATC, hotels and limos, aircraft routing, load planning, security, customer service, our regional ops, the duty pilots, of course, and our sector managers. It starts with the plan, as I alluded to earlier. The plan puts together where are we going to fly, when are we going to fly there. After we have a plan, our operations analysts go crazy. They love this stuff. There's spreadsheets everywhere. Break this down to exactly how many airplanes we need. How many pilots do we need? How many flight attendants do we need? What is our maintenance requirement? What are our routes? All the way down to how many cans of Diet Coke do we have to buy on any given day to make this plan work. We get issued the plan after that. The plan does take into account historical attrition for weather and maintenance, but they don't know when it's going to happen. It's just kind of a percentage buffer that they put in there based on weather attrition in July across the last 30 years. That'll get baked into the plan, but we don't know on what day. From this, we get crew schedules, we get a general idea of what airplanes need to be in what locations and when, and then we start selling tickets, and we're off to the races. Like I said earlier, we in the IOC don't make the plan. We get issued the plan, we run with the plan. For us pilots, it starts at crew scheduling. From the moment our schedules are published until we sign in for a trip.
Rescheduling, please hold.
Yeah.
That's good. Please hold. Scheduling.
Hey, they left. All right. So until we sign in for a trip, crew scheduling includes that. Now, pilots tend to think of crew scheduling in terms of our personal relationship with them, solve my problem, my problem, my problem. Our schedulers don't necessarily look at it that way initially. They're looking at the whole airline. They know there's going to be open trips. So 30 days out, they're already coming up with a plan of how we're going to handle our open trips. Are we going to use reserves? Are we going to put things up for premium or makeup? We have a plan already for that. They're looking at the historical attrition for weather, for maintenance. They don't know when it's going to happen, but they're already starting to line up, not necessarily name by name, but we need this many pilots on this day to handle the attrition that's probably going to happen throughout this month. And they also put together contingencies for the time-sensitive stuff, things that happen maybe today that are going to affect tomorrow on the 787 out of Los Angeles. What's our plan to deal with that? And then all of that gets implemented into the 3 IT applications that face the pilot crew. That's our trip trade system, which has been updated to more of a real-time trip trade system. DOTC application, so if there are trips tomorrow that you want, you can bid for those. And then for all the folks on reserve, there's an IT system that runs that as well, so that our reserve pilots have much greater visibility on the trips that are open, who are they bidding against, who else is on reserve, what are the likelihood they're gonna get called, and how do I put my preferences in. While that is going on, our aircraft routers are moving airplanes around, or the best they can. We're taking down a rough idea of what airplanes we need and where, and breaking this down into types and numbers, exactly where they need to be, when they need to be there. With that information, they can start to identify some shortfalls. We don't have enough 737s in Chicago for the second week of the month. And with that information, they can go to maintenance and say, these are our priorities. Maintenance will fix any plane you want them to, but they can do a much better job if they know what the top priority is before we get started and work their way down the list. That also feeds into our logistics plan. How do we get spare parts in the right place at the right time? And they keep doing this. It's repetitive. So if you're looking at your schedule, or if you've looked at your schedule in the past and you have a certain aircraft assigned to you, and then it changes 17 times between then and you showing up to sign in and fly, it's because of this process that they keep doing over and over. Aircraft maintenance feeds right from aircraft routing. A common misconception with our pilots is aircraft maintenance controls what airplane you get. They have nothing to do with it. Maintenance fixes airplanes, returns them to service, and gives them back to the company. And the aircraft routers decide which airplanes are being used for what. They do like to have priorities, and they get that from aircraft routing. With those priorities, they can work preemptively to make sure they have the right planes in the right place at the right time. And then they gotta keep doing it, because as planes fly, they keep breaking, and we gotta figure out which ones can fly with some things a little bit broken, which airplanes need to be taken down and fixed right now. Our load planners, again, before the pilots even show up, they're already looking at the aircraft loading and balance, who's on the airplane, what cargo they're bringing, what baggage are they bringing, do we have live animals, what's the plan to make live animals not dead animals, don't put the live animals right next to the plutonium, by the way, there's plutonium, medical equipment, all this stuff. And from that, they're giving you an estimate of what your takeoff performance data should look like based on what they think your airplane is going to weigh when you go fly it. Then the pilots show up, they get that paperwork on their iPad and are ready to go. Everybody's favorite is dispatch. Dispatchers work hand in hand with captains to actually make the airline run one flight at a time. They build all our flight plans and they publish them. They're constantly talking to our weather forecasters and our ATC reps for routing, best ways around thunderstorms, what other airlines are doing to get to destinations, what's happening at the departure airfield, what's happening at the arrival airfield, fuel burns, et cetera, et cetera. This is usually your captain's one-stop shop for this building. Call the dispatcher for anything you need. The other phone number, of course, is the duty pilots, but the dispatchers do act as the captain's one-stop liaison to everything else in the company, which is very difficult for the dispatchers when they've got 10 flights that haven't taken off yet and 15 that are in the air that they're trying to work. They do the best they can, they do a great job. Dispatchers and captains, after that airplane pushes back, are the only two people in the company that have any control of that airplane. They have 100% operational control, and we enforce that here in the IOC. If a captain is told, you need to divert to Tulsa for this reason, that can only come through the dispatcher. So the company tells the dispatcher has to agree that is a good idea, then the dispatcher and the captain have control of that flight and figure out what they're gonna do. And if it's something different than the idea they were given, then the dispatcher handles that discussion with everyone else. But once the aircraft leaves pushback, captain and dispatcher, 100% operational control. I talked about our weather and our ATC liaisons a bit. Our weather forecasters, who are right there against the back wall, they work for us, they are not American Airlines employees. It's another company that we contract with called the Weather Company. They support everything that we do here. And they're here in the IOC every day. It's the same people every day. So even though they don't work for American Airlines, it's the same faces, and they are very familiar with our operation. Our ATC liaisons do work for us, and they're watching every aspect of how the FAA and other countries are routing their traffic and making sure that the dispatchers and the director on the bridge is aware of any shortfalls, any slowdowns, any ground stops, and really jumping through all these hoops to make sure that the metal keeps moving. If you've ever been given an expedited taxi because you're about to time out, that came from our ATC reps in the back of the room who went to dispatch, who called the FAA and said, when this one pushes back, make sure they taxi first to the runway so they can get out of there. That all happened from inside here, whether you like it or not. Maybe you wanted a timeout. Now, the most important slide, of course, is the IOC duty pilots. Jeff talked about this a little bit. There are at any time 10 to 12 of us. We're not chief pilots. We get accused of that a lot. A lot of our callers ask, well, aren't you the chief pilot? Can't you do this? We can't do everything. More of a chief pilot light. We don't handle pay issues. We don't handle disciplinary issues. We stay out of those discussions entirely. But we're here all the time. So anything a pilot would call a flight office for, but there's no one there because it's 2 in the morning or it's a Saturday, they call us and we can do most of that stuff. We have most of those authorities delegated to us. And the most important thing, we have the only unrecorded phone line in the entire building. So sometimes pilots call us just to vent, and it gets pretty colorful. And that's definitely the phone that they want to call. We just, you know, so put the headset down, count to 10, pick it back up, still going. All right, we get through it. But here's I'm not going to read all of these, but these are some examples of some of the stuff that we deal with all the time. It's kind of all over the map, the kind of stuff that the duty pilots deal with. While all that's going on, as if that isn't enough, our hotels company is looking at rooms and ground transportation. That you would think they could just write that in stone 30 days prior, but things happen at hotels. You know, they have power failures, they have problems happen, they have protests going on. So our hotels desk is looking at stuff a week in advance, 30 days in advance, but also tomorrow and today. Corporate security, speaking of protests, they're looking across the entire globe, everywhere we fly, every war, every protest, every civil unrest. When I first started this job, I was so excited because we had a protest in Bogota. About a week in, I realized there's always something going on somewhere that we fly, and we're always moving crews to other hotels or moving flights out of cities entirely based on what's happening. Our sector managers, if you've ever talked to ops or a hub control center in your airplane, all of those organizations report uphill to a sector manager, then our sector managers sit right next to the director. So if you're having trouble with your catering and ops at your airfield says we don't have any catering, well then that goes to the sector manager who goes back downhill to that airfield and says, yes, actually you do have catering and you've got to solve this problem. But it's fueling, it's catering, it's everything to get the aircraft ready and everything about running that airfield. So our sector managers will have a collection of airfields that they are managing. We typically take all the wide body ops and put into one sector manager because that's pretty important. And then everything that's narrow body, we'll split that up regionally amongst 1, 2, or 3 sector managers depending on how much of an operation we got going on. Our customer service management is in here as well. They're also on the bridge. Kind of think of them as like a lead gate agent. They're making sure all the gate agents for all their flights have what they need before we get going. Regional ops is in here too. Not all of it, but we do have a liaison cell to tell us what's going on with our wholly owned regional, make sure that synchronizes with mainline. And the IOC director is on the phone with the company senior leadership to let them know what changes we're gonna have to make day by day. Remember, all that is before the pilots even show up. Now the pilots show up and everything changes. Not really, not a lot changes. It's most of the same people working, they're doing some slightly different things now that we're within about an hour or so of pushback. Starting with crew tracking. Crew tracking gets the handoff from crew scheduling the moment the pilots sign in. And crew tracking is responsible to ensure that the sign-in happened, fit for duty's been signed, flight plan's been signed, and they own that crew and that trip until it blocks in on its last leg, and then those pilot schedules go back to crew scheduling until the next trip. They also implement emergency removals and reassignments. Implement is the key term there. If you've ever had a horrible reassignment, crew tracking implemented that horrible reassignment. They probably did not think of it. That comes from somewhere else that you can't get to on the phone tree by design. We'll talk about that in a moment. So if a crew tracker ever says, I'm just the messenger, that was accurate. They're implementing the change, they did not think of the change. So dispatch, weather, and ATC. Now the captain has arrived and is signed in. Your dispatcher is working very closely with the captain, adjustments to the flight plan, adjustments to fueling, and the dispatcher is working that all the way to shutdown at the destination. Anything that needs to happen, changes in reroutes, everything, that's getting put together right there. And the dispatcher is also the captain's liaison to maintenance. Now obviously our pilots can talk to maintenance right at the station. If anything needs to happen with our maintenance operations center, that goes through dispatch so that the captain and the dispatcher are talking to maintenance at the same time and everybody's on the same sheet of music. Load planning, we're back to load planning. They already did weight and balance, right? Well, here's the secret. Nobody knows what an aircraft really weighs. It's Bermuda Triangle, black holes, and then what does an airplane weigh? In the order of mysteries in this universe. We start with an estimate of what we think it's going to weigh based on how many tickets we sold, what cargo we have. Then they start putting actual planes and stuff on, or people and stuff onto the airplane, and then your load planners come back with a revised estimate, which we call load closeout. So that gives a revised estimate of what do you weigh, what's your balance, and then we calculate performance numbers that take any errors that may be baked into that into account so that it's still safe. And if those numbers don't add up, we start over and come up with a different takeoff plan to accommodate the data that is a little bit outside of what we anticipated. And our sector managers, talked about them a little bit. Again, they sit on the IOC floor. Every ops and hub control center reports to a sector manager, one for all the wide bodies. All the narrow bodies are split up geographically. Everything that happens with an airplane on the ramp, parking, cleaning, boarding, catering, fueling, all that stuff, before we can push back, the sector managers are providing oversight to the ops centers and the hub control centers that are actually executing that. Our customer service manager for the whole system sits up there on the bridge. He's got a small team of people that help him out on the ops floor. Think of it as kind of a lead gate agent. The IOC director may need a one-stop shop to reservations and ticketing and deadhead travel and non-rev travel systems. Our system customer service manager handles all of that. They also keep track of how many flights we're doing that day, how many people are we moving, what are our charter flights, where are they going, who's going to be aboard, and how's that coming together. And if we have to do a passenger removal along with corporate security, our system customer service managers are very involved in that. Speaking of security, corporate security. Also on the bridge, they have a small team of people that you don't see that often. There's always one rep on the bridge. The team of corporate security is another room and reports to their representative on the bridge. That's our conduit to all the three-letter agencies, TSA, DHS, FAA, etc. They are critical in our threat level assessment. So if we have a problem with a passenger and we're trying to figure out where does this fit, is this someone who just had too much to drink? Is this someone who's an actual physical threat? Is this someone who's an actual deliberate threat to the airplane and the operation itself? Our corporate security reps are helping to make that assessment. They also have the phone line to all the law enforcement agencies at all the airfields. So if our captain, through dispatch, says that we need to be met by law enforcement officers when we land and park, corporate security is the one who makes that happen. They're also looking at our layover locations all the time for threats on the ground, threats to ground transportation, threats at your hotel, protests, civil unrest, possible conflict and war. Then there's the duty pilots. Once the pilots are flying their flights, not a lot's falling off of our list. We're not going to handle travel at 6 probably. We're not dealing with bereavement or jury duty or national disaster. A passport renewal, probably. But the rest of this stuff comes up after sign-in all the time. And now we get to aircraft routing and crew coordination, what we call the units. If you've ever called the 1-800 VIP crew line, you know that there's a phone tree you go through. You can talk to crew tracking, you can talk to scheduling, you can talk to vacations. You don't get to talk to the units. And they did that deliberately. The units are put together as self-contained teams, usually organized by aircraft type. Team of about 5 to 6 people, and there are many of these units out there. They're the ones who are putting the airline back on track after we get a disruption. So by aircraft type, they own the airplanes, they own the crews that are flying those trips on those airplanes, and they're the ones that are moving the puzzle pieces around when we go into irregular operations and sending you somewhere other than the trip that you bid for so we can keep the metal moving. They're typically comprised of a crew coordinator, that's like a super scheduler, a dispatcher, a maintenance planner, a customer service rep, and an aircraft router. Like I said, they're the ones who put this operation back together. First, they're trying to keep it from falling off the tracks, but once we do have an actual disruption, it goes to the units to start putting reassignments and rerouting of aircraft together to get us back on track as quickly as possible. Again, it's the people and this place that make this happen. 700,000 flights in one summer. That's 72 million passengers. 7,000 flights a day sometimes. 6,500 flights a day is very common. We have 9 pilot hubs with 16,000 pilots. I don't even know how many flight attendants we have, it's a lot. We're also dealing with quadruple digit new hires every year, and seniority is not really what it used to be. We now have a lot of captains out there with less than 2 years on the property. So the experience level on a flight deck can be quite low, and the IOC here is helping to keep the system running with all of these challenges. Yep. All right, we've made it to the conclusion. Our job here is to run this airline as closely to the plan as possible. We have 1,700 people who work here. They work in shifts. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We try to prevent the operational chaos and recover from it when it happens. And no one does it better than us. When CrowdStrike took down several airlines simultaneously, we were 3 days ahead of United, getting back on our feet and getting running. We were a week and a half ahead of Delta, getting back running. And it's because of the people who work out here and how we built the facility for them to do their jobs. If you have any questions, Captain Greg Lintel, Captain Seth McLean, and First Officer Kimberly Anderson are here to field them.